Do you want to travel to Canada? Or do you want to travel to Bangui, Cameroon, Africa? In this video, I'll be comparing and contrasting the differences in the Canadian culture and Meta culture. Welcome to the Meta culture channel. The first difference is dressing. In Meta culture, we wear a lot of traditional clothing and we try to cover up, whereas in the Canadian culture it's okay to wear something really short and expose even your cleavage. But in my culture, you have to really maintain some sense of decency by wearing clothes that covers you up and wear a lot of colorful clothing. Another difference is greetings. The greetings in the Canadian culture are pretty brief. Sometimes they give handshakes when they're selling a business deal, or they give hugs and kisses on their cheek or lips. In the Meta culture, we mostly greet people by handshakes and sometimes hugs. We don't give kisses or pegs openly. Yeah. Another one is calling people by names. In Canadian culture, it is okay and normal to call somebody by their name even if they are older than you, but Meta culture, we don't call elderly people or somebody that's older than you by the name. We use a lot of titles and honorific titles like Mr. and Mrs. Our own traditional honorific titles are Nini, Mama, Abbot, just to name a few. In the Canadian culture, they do use Mr. and Mrs. or Madame. In professional settings, let's say you work in a company or you're working at a hospital, when you're addressing your client or your patient, you attach that title to it. Good. Another difference is the food. Meta culture, our food is spicy and has strong flavors, but in the Canadian culture, their food is not that spicy as compared to the food in the Meta culture. Both cultures hold politeness and respect to a high value. Meta people and Canadians are both very respectful and polite. Yeah. Payment of bills in the Meta culture are mostly done by the men or the husbands, because most of them are the ones working. The mothers or the wives are mostly at home taking care of the homes. But in the Canadian culture, most couples work, so they kind of share the bills to pay at home. Yeah. And in Meta culture, if somebody invites you out, they say taking you to a restaurant, the person inviting you pays the bills. But in the Canadian culture, somebody could invite you in a restaurant and decide it's up to the person to pay the bills, but usually you share the bills when they're being paid in a restaurant. So in the Canadian culture, before you go to somebody's house, you have to notify them and they have to give you the confirmation for you to come and at a particular time. But in Meta culture, you could just randomly go to somebody's house and you knock at the door and you're always welcome. Yeah. Meta culture, when you invite people over to come visit you at your place, you are the one that cooks the food, buys the drinks to entertain your guests. The Canadian culture, sometimes the person inviting you will do all the cooking and the drinks. Sometimes they'll have to contact you to contribute or do some of the things. They could ask you to buy the drinks or cook some of the food and bring it over. Same thing too with the occasions. Yeah. In the Canadian culture, they do a lot of baby showers, which is a very good way to socialize and support the person having the baby. Meta culture, we don't really do that a lot. Baby showers, we just mostly celebrate the birth of a child with these traditional songs, birth songs. Yeah. In the Canadian culture, there's a lot of division of labor between husband and wives at home or between couples when it comes to doing chores, working, taking care of the kids. For example, if the husband is cooking, maybe the wife is cleaning, the husband's going to drop the kids in school, the wife is picking the kids from school. But in the meta culture, since mostly the men work, most of the chores at home or whatever is being done by the wives. Yeah. So worships and praise in the Canadian culture are pretty brief as compared to those in meta culture. In meta land, church service on Sundays would take hours, and people take all the time to get dressed, to spend hours dancing and singing in church. They have the time, but in the Canadian culture, church services are pretty brief because most of the people have to go to work after. Funerals in Canadian culture and meta culture are pretty solemn. They both use candles and flowers, but the meta people kind of celebrate it more. They kind of turn it into a party. They kind of cook a lot of food, buy drinks, entertain people, celebrating the life of the deceased person, and they have all these traditional procedures to follow and costumes to follow when a person is dead. And the burials are mostly done in the compound of the deceased person. So they bury the person that dies in their backyard, in their home, except otherwise if the person belongs to a particular denomination or had asked that he or she should be buried in a cemetery, they will do that in the meta culture. But in the Canadian culture, nobody's being buried at their backyard at home. There's a government cemetery provided where you could rent or buy a plot to bury your loved ones. Yeah. Punctuality and strictness on schedule is a big one for the Canadians. So they're very punctual and conscious when it comes to time. If you have an appointment at 7 or you're starting work at 7, 7 is 7. But in the meta culture, we're not very punctual and strict when it comes to time. So 7 a.m. could be 8 a.m. The person will show up later. It's pretty elastic, the time for us. Dating in the Canadian culture is really openly accepted. A girl or a boy at 18 is free to bring his or her girlfriend or boyfriend at home and present them to their parents. When the meta culture, we don't just present our partner, boyfriends and girlfriends to our parents openly. You only present when you're really sure, when your guys are taking the next step, which is commitment into marriage. Yeah. Then families in Canada, the Canadian culture are not that big as compared to those in the meta culture. Meta people The meta people have very big families. We have extended families, uncles, aunties, cousins, great cousins, uncles. So it's pretty big. Yeah. The customs and traditions of the meta people are pretty long and entails a lot when it comes to traditional weddings and death celebrations. They give you this list and the protocol or the number of people you have to see and how much you have to spend. But in the Canadian culture, they don't have all these lengthy traditional customs to follow. Yeah. Table manners are very important in the Canadian culture. using of utensils on the table, knife, fork, having your soup before the main course. It's very crucial. But with the Meta people, we don't really use a lot of utensils when we eat. Most of our traditional meals have been eating with our fingers. So if you serve a traditional meal in Meta, you just wash your hands and use your fingers. You eat. Most of them we don't use any utensils. We use our traditional bowls to eat in them. The Canadian society is pretty fast-paced, so things are done really quick. Work, they want it to be fast and efficient. Communication, you have to be fast. Replying to emails, text. In the Meta culture, it's not like that. It's a pretty slow paced community. People take their time to respond. The Canadians have their own accent when they're communicating. The Meta people do have their own accent. So sometimes when these two cultures meet, it's hard for them to understand each other. You keep asking, what are you saying? It takes time for you to understand what they are saying. Birthdays. In the Canadian culture, the celebrant is the one that is receiving the gifts, and you expect your friends and families to bring stuff for you or to take you out for a treat. But in the Meta culture, we don't celebrate birthdays a lot, but if we do that, the person celebrating cooks the food, buys the cake, then invite friends and family over. So it's up to the person who is invited to choose. It's not obligatory to buy something for the celebrant or to support the person celebrating their birthday. So those are some of the differences. I just said, let me share them with you guys so that if you happen to mingle or meet Meta people or Canadians, you will not be surprised or confused or have difficulties understanding why things are being done in a particular way. Thank you so much for watching. Hit the subscribe button and share the video. Bye for now.